The alarm bell screamed through the Galactic Communications Center on Nexus Prime. Every operator on the deck froze. The sound wasn't like the normal alerts they heard 100 times a day. It was deeper, sharper, like a blade dragged across glass. It meant only one thing: Priority Alpha, a cry for help from a civilization on the edge of extinction. Chief Operator Rilvak's 3 eyes widened, his pale blue skin flushing darker with shock. In 40 years of service, he had never once seen a Priority Alpha come through. The message Origin flashed across his screen. His throat tightened. Kithra System. He pressed the acceptance rune with shaking fingers. A voice filled the chamber, high and melodic, but cracking with terror. Please, someone, anyone, help us. The Devourers have come. They eat our worlds. They turn everything into more of themselves. 3 billion souls cry out for mercy. If you hear this, if anyone hears this, save us. The signal stuttered, repeating itself in loops. A chorus of other Kithan voices wailed in the background, soft and beautiful even in despair. Rilvak felt the sound burn into his bones. Within minutes, the signal reached every major power in the galaxy. The Zenthari Collective, the Athathuran Empire, the Kronos Federation, even the mercenary guilds and pirate kings, all listened. All ran their calculations. All responded with the same cold message. We are sorry, we cannot help. The Zenthari's quantum computers predicted 87% casualties minimum if they engaged. Too costly. The Athathuran psychics touched the machines' minds and recoiled in horror. No souls, no mercy, only hunger. The Kronos war simulators ran millions of battle plans. Every one ended in defeat. So one by one the galaxy's giants turned away. The Catharin's death would be regrettable, tragic, but inevitable. Except there was one civilization no one had asked yet. Humans. Captain Jake Morrison leaned back in the command chair of the UHS Defiance, a mid-range exploration ship with light weapons and a crew of just 23. By galactic standards, it was nothing special. By human standards, it was home. Morrison was 35, dark-haired, but already going gray at the edges. Stress did that to you out here. His brown eyes scanned the incoming report on the ship's display. His jaw tightened. Captain, said Tony Walsh, the ship's communications officer, his voice shaky. We just received the Catharin distress call. Looks like everyone else already declined to help. Morrison read the transcript twice. Then he looked at the list of responses from the great powers. Every single one was a polite refusal. He clenched his fist. Amy, he said to his second-in-command. Lieutenant Amy Carter glanced up from the tactical station. She was only 28, but sharp as a blade, blonde hair tied back, blue eyes full of focus. 3 billion people, sir, she said simply, and nobody else is going to help. Morrison nodded slowly. That was Amy for you, always cutting right to the heart. Paul, he said to his chief engineer, how far from Kithra if we burn everything we've got? Paul Rodriguez looked up from his console, grease still under his nails from an earlier repair. 6 days, Captain, at maximum burn, he hesitated. But, sir, we don't have the firepower for something that scared off the Zenthari. Lisa, Morrison turned to the ship's medical officer. Dr. Lisa Thompson was quiet, soft-voiced, with hands made for healing, but her eyes carried a calm wisdom that Morrison had come to trust. Jake, she said gently, we all know what the right thing to do is. The question is whether we're brave enough to do it. The bridge was silent. Tony looked at his captain. Amy was already pulling up star charts. Paul was calculating fuel requirements. Lisa was checking medical supplies. They knew what Morrison was going to say. The way I see it, Morrison said softly, we swore an oath to protect those who can't protect themselves. Doesn't matter if they're human or alien. Doesn't matter if we're outgunned. 3 billion people are about to die, and we're the only ones even willing to try. He stood and walked toward the main view screen, where stars stretched in every direction, cold, distant, indifferent. Somewhere out there, a civilization was crying for help, and everyone else had turned away. Besides, he added, a grin tugging at his lips, since when have impossible odds ever stopped a human before? Amy Carter smiled back. Never, sir, that's what makes us dangerous. Morrison turned back to his crew. Tony, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're responding to the Catharin distress call. Paul, plot a course, maximum burn. Amy, start working tactical scenarios. Lisa, prep for refugees. And Tony. Yes, Captain. Send a response to the Catharans. Tell them help is on the way. For the first time since the distress call went out, someone dared to hope. 6 days later, the UHS Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kithra system. Morrison felt his heart sink. The tactical display showed a nightmare. Where there had once been 3 lush, peaceful worlds, only one remained. Catha Prime, scarred, bleeding, gashed open by monstrous mining operations. Orbiting it were hundreds of mechanical ships, massive, angular, hungry. The other 2 worlds? Gone. In their place floated enormous factory ships, each the size of a moon built from the bones of the dead planets. They pulsed with sickly light, birthing new devourer ships by the thousands. My God, Amy whispered. The reports were wrong. There aren't hundreds, there are thousands. Tony's face was pale as he read the energy scans. Captain, those factory ships have more firepower than a Zenthari battle fleet. Paul stared at the sensor data. His voice was grim. They're not just mining the planet, they're converting the entire mass into more machines. At this rate, Catha Prime will be gone in 48 hours. Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, every eye on him. Everything the galaxy's great powers had said was true. This was a suicide mission. 1 human ship, 23 crew, against an enemy that had already consumed 2 worlds. Any sane commander would retreat. But Jake Morrison had never been accused of being entirely sane. Lisa, he said quietly, are you picking up life signs from the surface? The doctor bent over her scanners, adjusting to cut through the interference. After a long pause, she gasped. Yes, massive clusters underground. They've moved into their tunnel systems, but the devourers are closing in. Every hour they're getting closer. Morrison nodded. 3 billion souls, hiding like prey while machines chewed their world apart above them. And here he was, with 23 humans and a ship barely worth mentioning. He turned to his crew, his eyes hard with determination. All right, let's see if we can do the impossible one more time. The crew held their breath as the Defiance angled its nose toward Catha Prime, engines burning bright against the darkness. And the galaxy, watching through Tony's wideband broadcast, held its breath too. The Deathworlders were coming. The Defiance drifted low over Catha Prime's battered atmosphere, its engines humming as Morrison guided the ship into a cautious orbit. Below, the planet looked like a scarred beast, wounds cut deep into its crust, glowing red with molten veins where devourer drills had chewed straight through mountains. Vast oceans were poisoned with black sludge, bubbling and steaming. Cities lay in ruins, jagged skeletons of metal and stone, gnawed apart like carcasses left on a battlefield. But there was still life. Lisa's scanners picked up faint but stubborn signals, underground pockets, tunnels, caverns. The Catharans had burrowed deep, clinging to survival while the machines above stripped their home bare. Picking up transmissions, Tony said, hands flying across his console. Static filled the bridge, then softened into a trembling, melodious voice. This is Elder Selani of the Kithra people. Are you another power come to refuse us? Speak quickly. We have no time for false hope. Morrison stepped forward, straightening his jacket even though the alien couldn't see him. Elder Selani, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Defiance. We're not here to refuse you. We're here to help. There was a long silence. Then the voice returned, uncertain. Human, we do not know this species. Are you perhaps a scout for a greater fleet? No, Morrison admitted. Just 1 ship, 23 crew, but we don't leave 3 billion people to die without trying. The silence stretched longer this time. Amy glanced at Morrison, worried. But finally, the elder's voice returned, trembling but warmer. You are either the bravest beings in the galaxy or the most foolish. But we are desperate enough to accept either. If you would aid us, we will trust you. Lisa leaned close to Morrison, whispering, Jake, they're on the edge. You can hear it in their voices. He nodded. Tony, lock that signal. We'll need constant contact with the elders. Locked. Amy's voice was tight. Captain, those devourer patrols are thick. If we get too close, we're dead before we can help anyone. Then we'll have to get clever, Morrison said. The first descent came at night. The Defiance slipped through clouds heavy with ash, skimming low over shattered plains. Below, glowing eyes and shifting shadows marked the devourer harvesters, machines the size of skyscrapers, moving with unnatural precision, tearing the planet piece by piece. Amy's voice came through the comms, calm but tense. "Captain, you'll be on the ground less than 10 minutes before patrols triangulate. You'll need cover." Morrison smirked. "That's why we brought a mining ship, Lieutenant." Rodriguez grinned from engineering, already pulling up control schematics. The Defiance wasn't built for war, but its hull carried industrial cutting beams, seismic probes, and drilling torches, tools designed for tearing rock apart. Tonight, those tools would tear apart machines. "Tony, give me wideband noise," Morrison ordered. The ship's speakers roared with a wall of sound, not words, but chaos. Static, interference, overlapping frequencies. Devourer sensors twitched and jittered. For a few precious minutes, the machines saw only static. The Defiance dropped Morrison, Carter, and a half-squad of Marines into the ruins of an ancient Catharan city. The air smelled of ash and metal. A broken spire leaned overhead, its once beautiful crystalline structure cracked and bleeding faint light. Shadows moved in the dust, slow and grinding. The Devourers. Carter crouched beside Morrison. "We don't have the firepower to take them head-on." "We're not here to take them head-on," Morrison said. He scanned the rubble. "We're here to make them confused. Humans are good at that." They found the first Catharan, refugees an hour later. A group of 100 huddled in a half-collapsed transport hub, glowing crystals lighting the chamber faintly. They were tall and slender, feathered crests lining their heads, voices soft like music. But their eyes, enormous, luminous, were dull with despair. An elder stepped forward, his feathers dulled with ash. "You are the humans." "That's us," Morrison said, trying to sound casual despite the despair pressing down on him. "We're here to get you out." The elder studied him, uncertain. "The Zenthari said we could not be saved. The Athatharans said the machines were unstoppable. Why do you say otherwise?" Morrison shrugged. "Because we haven't tried yet, and trying is what we do best." The elder blinked slowly. For the first time, a faint light returned to his eyes. But the Devourers were not idle. Tony's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, multiple patrols converging on your location. They've pierced through the noise. You have 5 minutes before they're on top of you." "Copy that," Morrison said. He turned to Amy. "Time to improvise." She grinned, pulling a modified mining charge from her pack. "You always know how to make a girl's day, Captain." The humans planted the charges along the rubble's foundations, connecting them with wires and short-range triggers. Then they herded the refugees deeper into the tunnels. The ground trembled. The first Devourer machines appeared, massive insect-like constructs with whirring blades and glowing red sensors. Carter whispered, "Steady." The machines closed in, their weapons warming with a low hum. "Now," Morrison barked. The charges detonated. The ground split apart, rubble collapsing into a sinkhole. The machines stumbled, their perfect formations shattered. For the first time, they looked clumsy, confused. "Move," Morrison shouted. The team and refugees sprinted into the tunnels while the machines rebalanced themselves, whirring in mechanical frustration. Hours later, back aboard the Defiance, the crew regrouped. The rescued Catharans filled the cargo bay, their voices echoing like soft wind chimes. Lisa moved among them, treating wounds and calming the terrified. Amy leaned over the tactical display, pointing at the enemy formations. "Captain, look at this. They're efficient but rigid. No wasted motion, no improvisation. They're programmed for order, which means..." Morrison's eyes lit with realization. "Which means they can't handle chaos." Rodriguez leaned in. "And chaos just happens to be our specialty." Tony hesitated. "But Captain, there are thousands of them, and they're adapting. Every time we throw something new at them, they'll learn faster." Morrison placed a hand on the display, tracing the swarm around Catha Prime. "Then we stay one step ahead. We don't fight them at their game. We make them play ours." The next day, Elder Solani appeared on the comms again, her voice weary but curious. "Human Morrison, my people are asking, what is your plan? How do you hope to succeed where fleets of thousands have failed?" Morrison looked at his crew. Carter's grin was sharp. Rodriguez's eyes burned with excitement. Lisa's quiet strength steadied the air. Even Tony, despite his nerves, was nodding. He turned back to the elder. "We don't fight them in neat formations. We don't calculate acceptable losses. We don't retreat just because the odds say we should. We fight dirty, we fight crazy, and sometimes that's enough." Selani was silent for a long time. Then her voice returned, trembling but stronger. You humans, you may truly be the last answer we have left. On the bridge, the tactical alarms flared. Tony's voice cracked. Captain, we've got movement. One of the factory ships is powering up its main engines. Amy's face went pale. If that thing jumps, the devourers spread to other systems. It won't just be Catha Prime. The whole galaxy will burn. Morrison stared at the display. A cold dread settled in his stomach. This was bigger than saving one world. If they failed here, countless others would follow. He took a deep breath. All right, then we stop it here, whatever it takes. The bridge crew exchanged glances. No one argued. They all knew what he meant. They were going to fight a factory ship. The Defiant skimmed low through Catha Prime's storm-choked skis, thunder crackling across the hull. Ash fell like snow, coating the viewport in gray. Morrison stood behind Carter at the tactical station, eyes fixed on the enemy formation surrounding the planet. The factory ship loomed above the horizon, a titanic construct of jagged metal, glowing with inner fire. It dwarfed entire cities, its engines pulsing as it prepared for a hyperspace jump. Once it left orbit, the devourers would spread like wildfire across the stars. Options? Morrison asked. His voice was calm, but his crew knew the steel beneath. Carter frowned. We don't have weapons powerful enough to stop that thing in orbit. If we try, they'll swat us like an insect. Rodriguez leaned forward, tapping a schematic. But their ground operation is different. Their main processing hub is planet-side. If we disrupt the supply chain, maybe we slow the factory long enough to stop the jump. Ground? Lisa asked quietly. You mean land? In the middle of that? She gestured at the display, where hundreds of mining machines crawled across the planet's surface, ripping mountains apart. Rodriguez nodded. Exactly. Their ground units are designed for harvesting, not combat, if we hit them where they're weakest. We make chaos, Morrison finished. He turned to his crew, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Looks like we're going dirt side. The landing was rough. The Defiance roared down through the clouds, engines screaming as Devourer patrols locked onto the ship. Amy Carter directed countermeasures, firing decoy flares and scrambling beacons. The sky lit with red streaks as enemy beams slashed past. Brace, Morrison barked. The ship shuddered as a glancing hit tore across the port hull. Panels sparked, alarms screamed. But Rodriguez held the engines together with sheer stubbornness, coaxing the ship through a storm of fire. They slammed into the ground in the ruins of what had once been a Catharan capital. Skyscrapers of crystal and steel lay broken, half buried in ash. Landing zone secured, Carter shouted. Marines move out, Morrison commanded. The humans spilled into the ruins, 10 Marines led by Carter, with Rodriguez lugging modified mining charges and Lisa coordinating evac routes for civilians. The air was thick with dust and the stench of scorched metal. In the distance, enormous mining constructs tore into the earth, their cutting beams glowing like suns. Carter crouched behind a collapsed wall, scanning the nearest Devourer harvester. Target spotted, but Captain, those things are the size of skyscrapers. Morrison joined her, squinting at the machine, its legs stabbed into the soil, its arms cutting deep into the planet's crust. We don't need to kill it, we just need to confuse it. Rodriguez grinned and tossed him a modified mining charge. Lucky for us, confusion is easy to make loud. The first attack was almost comical. Carter's squad darted from cover, hurling explosives onto the harvester's lower joints. The charges detonated with sharp, chaotic blasts, nowhere near enough to destroy the machine, but enough to stagger it. The harvester froze. Its sensors blinked, confused by the unexpected damage. Its programming demanded efficiency. It tried to recalculate. For 30 seconds, it simply stopped. That was 30 seconds too long against humans. Carter barked orders and her squad swarmed, blasting sensors, targeting joints, ducking away before the harvester could respond. By the time its logic subroutines caught up, the Marines had vanished back into the rubble. Captain, Carter reported over comms, her voice triumphant. They don't know how to handle us. Every time we act irregular, they hesitate. Good, Morrison said. Let's keep them guessing. As the humans struck again and again, the Catharans began to believe. In underground shelters, Elder Selani listened to the distant booms echoing through the rock. Her people, huddled in tunnels, trembled with every impact, but instead of despair, a new sound stirred among them. Hope. The humans fight differently, Salani told her council. They do not wait, they do not calculate, they disrupt, they confuse, and the devourers hesitate. The council exchanged doubtful looks, but Salani's voice grew firmer. Perhaps this is what the others could not see. Logic cannot defeat hunger, but chaos might. Hours into the campaign, Carter's squad regrouped in the shadow of a shattered spire. Sweat streaked their faces and dust coated their armor. Rodriguez was grinning ear to ear, jury-rigging another charge from Catherine Mining Supplies. These machines are obsessed with patterns. You hit them off-beat, they trip over themselves. It's like fighting a computer that panics when you don't play by its rules. Lisa frowned, wiping blood from a Catherine refugee's arm. But they're learning. Every skirmish lasts longer before they adapt. Tony's voice crackled over comms from orbit. Confirmed, their processors are shifting subroutines. Captain, they're adapting faster than predicted. Morrison cursed under his breath, which means we need to push harder before they figure us out. Night fell over Catha Prime. The ruins glowed with fire and the shimmer of cutting beams. Carter's squad launched hit-and-run strikes, using guerrilla tactics the devourers had never faced. Explosions lit the sky as harvesters toppled into sinkholes, their formations shredded. But the machines began responding in kind. Carter crouched in rubble, rifle hot in her hands. Her Marines fought desperately against a patrol of modified drones, sleeker, faster, built to chase. Captain, she panted over the radio. They've adapted. These aren't harvesters, they're combat refits. They're learning to fight us on our own terms. On the Defiance, Morrison slammed a fist against the console. Damn it, they're evolving faster than we can disrupt. Rodriguez's voice cut in, breathless. Captain, if they've started adapting, it won't be long before they counter everything we throw. We need a bigger play, something insane. Morrison stared at the tactical display. His crew's faces reflected in the screen, Carter bloodied but unbowed, Rodriguez wild-eyed with manic energy, Lisa cradling wounded refugees, Tony pale but steady at his post. He exhaled slowly. All right, then we stop holding back. We're not just going to hit their harvesters, we're going to take the fight straight to their heart. Tony blinked. Captain, you don't mean. I mean we're going to land inside their main processing zone, Morrison said, voice hard. Right under their factory ship. The bridge fell silent. Even Carter, fearless as she was, hesitated. That's suicide, she said quietly. Morrison nodded. Exactly, which is why they'll never see it coming. In orbit, the Devourer factory ship pulsed with sickly light. Energy surged through its engines, preparing for hyperspace. Its orbit shifted, its hunger stretching outward toward untouched stars. And in the ruins below, Jake Morrison looked at his crew, his Marines, his alien allies. Gear up, he said. It's time we show these machines what happens when perfect meets crazy. The Defiance lifted off, engines blazing, heading straight into the shadow of the factory ship. And for the first time, the Devourers turned their full attention toward the humans. The Defiance skimmed across the surface of Catha Prime, its engines cutting swaths of fire through the ash-choked sky. Below, the ground shuddered as Devourer harvesters tore deeper into the planet's crust. Above, the factory ship's engines flared brighter, preparing for hyperspace. Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, eyes fixed on the tactical display. We're running out of time. If that thing jumps, the whole galaxy burns. Rodriguez leaned over his console, sweat streaking his face. Captain, I've been analyzing their energy distribution. The factory ship relies on planetary feed lines, geothermal stations that draw power straight from the core. If we can disrupt those. We turn the planet against them, Morrison finished. Rodriguez grinned manic. Exactly, make Catha Prime itself our weapon. Amy Carter frowned. That's insane. Tinkering with a planet's core could rip it apart. Which is why they won't expect it, Morrison said. He looked around the bridge. His crew knew the risks. He could see it in their faces, but not one of them said no. All right, he ordered. Prep the ground teams. We're going to break their perfect machine. The Defiance descended again, cutting through storms to land near a vast geothermal station. Once, it had been a marvel of Catharan engineering, tall crystalline towers channeling the planet's natural heat into clean energy. Now, devourer machines squatted over it, drilling cables into the earth, siphoning its power into their war engines. Rodriguez ran his hands over the cracked control panels. Beautiful work. Shame the machines gutted it. He cracked a grin. But with a little human touch, we can make it scream. Morrison raised a brow. Scream. Rodriguez's grin widened. Controlled earthquakes, seismic chaos, they're built for stability, let's give them the opposite. The team split. Carter led half the Marines to distract devourer patrols. Lisa coordinated with Catharan leaders underground, directing civilians away from danger zones. Morrison stayed with Rodriguez, covering him while he hacked into the geothermal systems. The first detonation rocked the surface like thunder. Towers of crystal cracked and splintered. Energy rippled through the ground in chaotic waves. Devourer harvesters stumbled, their perfect formations breaking as the earth shifted unpredictably. Cracks split the soil, swallowing machines whole. Others found their delicate processing disrupted, precision collapsing into chaos. Carter's voice came over the comm, sharp and fierce. It's working, they're stumbling all over themselves. In the tunnels, Dr. Lisa Thompson fought a different battle. The Catharan refugees moved in panicked herds, their glowing feathers brushing the walls. Children clung to their parents, elders stumbled, voices rising in terrified song. Lisa directed them with calm precision, her portable screen mapping safe corridors. Elder Selani, she said, voice firm. We need groups of 1,000 moving through Tunnel 7 every 10 minutes. We can get 200,000 people out before the Devourers adapt. Selani's luminous eyes shimmered with fear. Our people, they are afraid to leave. They have seen what the machines do above ground. Lisa placed a gentle hand on the elder's arm. Then tell them this. Humans have a saying, when you're going through hell, keep going. This planet is hell right now, but we're going to get them through it. The elder studied her for a long moment, then nodded. His voice rose in a clear, steady song echoing through the tunnels. The refugees stilled, listening, and slowly they began to move. Above ground, the Devourers adapted. New units emerged from the factory ship, sleek combat drones bristling with weapons. They descended in swarms, cutting through dust and smoke. Carter's squad fought desperately in the ruins, explosions lighting the night. "Captain," she shouted over comms, "these aren't harvesters anymore, they're learning fast." Rodriguez swore, his hands flying over controls as the ground trembled violently. "I can hold them off for a while, but they're rerouting around the disruptions. They're smarter than I thought." Morrison scanned the horizon, jaw tightening. The machines weren't just adapting, they were accelerating. For every harvester that fell, 2 more combat drones rose. If they didn't escalate soon, the Devourers would outpace them completely. Tony's voice crackled from orbit. "Captain, you need to see this." Morrison looked up at the view screen. His stomach dropped. The factory ship's engines flared to full burn. Energy cascaded across its hull. It was seconds away from hyperspace. Amy's voice cut in tight with panic. "If that thing leaves, it won't just be Catha Prime, it'll spread everywhere." Rodriguez slammed a fist against the console. "Captain, the earthquakes won't be enough. We can stall them, but we can't stop the jump from here." Morrison's jaw set. He already knew what had to be done. "We're not going to stop it from here," he said. "We're going to stop it from inside." The crew froze. "You can't be serious," Carter whispered. "Dead serious," Morrison said. His eyes burned with determination. "We're going to board the factory ship, plant explosives on its core, blow it from the inside." Silence fell. Even Rodriguez, reckless, fearless Rodriguez, looked stunned. "Captain," Lisa said softly over comms, "that's suicide." Morrison's lips curved in a grim smile. "Yeah, which is why they'll never expect it." Back aboard the Defiance, preparations began. Marines reloaded their rifles, strapping on whatever explosives Rodriguez had jury-rigged. Carter reviewed attack maps, already sketching insane guerrilla maneuvers. Lisa stocked medical packs, knowing most of them wouldn't be enough. Rodriguez cornered Morrison in engineering. "Captain, you know what we're walking into. That thing's bigger than cities. Its core could power a sun." Morrison met his eyes. "Which is exactly why it has to die, because if it lives, no world is safe." Rodriguez shook his head, half terrified, half thrilled. "You're crazy, Captain." "Maybe," Morrison said, "but so far, crazy's the only thing that's worked." In the tunnels below, Elder Selani spoke quietly to Lisa. Your captain, he would truly enter the heart of the Devourers, with only one ship. Lisa nodded, her voice soft but unshaken. That's who we are. When the odds say impossible, we don't retreat, we fight anyway. The elder closed his eyes, feathers trembling. Then perhaps the humans are what the galaxy always needed, not logic, not power, but defiance. The Defiance rose into the sky once more, engines blazing. The Devourer factory ship loomed above them like a mountain of steel, its hull crawling with drones. On the bridge, Morrison looked around at his crew one last time. Tony pale but steady, Amy sharp-eyed and fearless, Rodriguez wild with anticipation, Lisa calm and resolute. Strap in, he said. We're about to do the stupidest, most human thing in galactic history. The ship angled upward, charging straight into the shadow of the factory ship. For the first time, the Devourers shifted. Their endless precision faltered. They concentrated their forces, hundreds of drones turning as one to face the tiny human vessel. The galaxy watched, transmissions broadcasting across every major civilization. Billions of alien eyes widened as one human ship charged into the maw of the unstoppable. Morrison's voice carried over the broadcast, calm and fierce. To every world that said this was impossible, watch closely. We're about to prove you wrong. The Defiance plunged into a storm of fire. The Defiance screamed into the maw of the factory ship. Heat flares licked the hull as point defense drones swarmed, their weapons chipping at the human craft like angry wasps. Sensors streaked red. The bridge shook with each hit. Morrison sat in the pilot's chair, hands steady on the controls. Amy's voice cut through the alarms. Captain, we're through their outer curtain. Hang on, I'm pulling us into a maintenance bay entrance. Rodriguez had rewired the ship's docking clamps to force a hard lock. You'll have 3 minutes before internal seals pressure and their systems isolate us, he said, voice sharp. No more, get your teams ready. Morrison looked around the cramped interior of the Defiance. 23 humans on a ship barely big enough to be proud of. Time had a different shape now, thin, urgent, loud. Everyone knows what to do, he said softly. This is what we signed up for. They moved fast. Carter led the first ground team, 6 Marines in scorched armor, faces painted with ash. Brooks, Chen, Martinez, names that had come to mean grit and loyalty to Morrison, moved like shadows. Rodriguez carried a heavy case of explosives wired with Catherine components. Lisa carried medical kits and a small field console to patch burned wiring or wounded bodies. Tony stayed behind to keep the ship ready, broadcasting their progress to whoever was watching. They cut through the maintenance hatch as if the ship grudgingly allowed it, a cold hiss and a rush of stale, machine-scented air. Inside, the factory ship breathed a metallic, deep sound that felt like a heartbeat. Tubes and conduits ran like veins. Conveyor belts and half-finished Devourer frames creaked in the dim light. The place smelled of oil and old fire. The corridors were wide, designed to move bulk parts and chassis. Their surfaces were clean of random debris. Devourer efficiency hated clutter. Morrison felt the order like a pressure against his skin. He felt very human in that place, small, messy, loud. Stick to the plan, Morrison whispered into his throat mic. 2 teams. Brooks, you and Martinez take the secondary conduits and plant charges on the feed lines. Chen, you and I go for the core access. Make noise. Make the ship pay attention to you. Brooks grinned. Then come find us when it's time to run, Captain. They advanced, careful but quick. Sensors above them flickered as if some unseen intelligence watched and cataloged their movement. The humans kept moving. That was the point, movement without pattern. The Devourers could not easily predict what moved like that. At first, the ship worked against them the way any machine does when surprised. It sent maintenance drones, clanking cleaners, and repair bots that were harmless and slow. The Marines smashed them with close-quarter tactics, using pry bars and cutting torches. The sounds echoed like a crude orchestra. This was not war in clean, efficient algorithms. It was a riot. It was improvisation. It was human. They reached the first conduit junction. Brooks and Martinez moved like 2 practiced hands, drilling into reinforced cable casings, feeding wires and charges, laughing under their breath when the machine beats above missed their step. Charge set, Martinez said, breath loud in his helmet. 10-minute timer. Brooks flicked the panel back into place. 10 minutes, good, enough to get people out. Morrison and Chen pushed forward toward the core. The corridors narrowed. The hum deepened until their bones felt it, Lights pulsed with the beat. Here the air tasted of concentrated power. Panels glowed with diagrams only machines would love. A smell rose, ozone, and something hot, like a forge, had been sealed in a chest. Core access should be 2 junctions down, Chen whispered. Sensors show massive containment fields. If we hit the right points, the whole containment should destabilize. Morrison swallowed. The men with him had to be focused, not heroic. Heroics were for stories. Focus was for survival. Watch your back, he said. Ignore the instinct to stand and look pretty for the galaxy. They rounded a corner and found a maintenance bay filled with half-assembled frames. A dozen security drones slept in rows, their indicators dim. The humans paused, holding breath together in the silent room. Something in the air shifted. Morrison's skin crawled. The machines were far more than metal. They were a set of behaviors, and something in the ship had noticed their behavior wasn't matching the patterns the devourers expected. The ship did not like imprecision. The first drone's indicator flared. Small red lights blinked, and in a perfect mechanical sequence the fleet woke. Morrison moved to the nearest console and slammed a fist into a control panel. Sparks flew. Chen dropped a charge under a conveyor rail. Alarms howled to life like animal cries. The ship's internal network blinked completely awake. It would be only a moment before the factory-wide defenses centralized and poured every resource to the breach. Now, Morrison shouted. He and Chen sprinted. Doors began to seal behind them, bulkheads slamming with a sound like a falling building. Drones lifted, their servos whispering death. Morrison's lungs filled with the noise of alarms and the tight, clean logic of machines recalibrating to hunt them. They ran through the plant's arteries, catwalks over vats, maintenance ducts, shadowed service tunnels. The factory's core lay below, a shattered sort of cathedral room where a sphere of pure energy rotated slowly, caged in rings and conduits. It was more beautiful and terrifying than anything Morrison had seen in his life. It pulsed like a sun locked in chains. Chen's hands flew as he set charges. He'd learned from Rodriguez's notes and from a reckless human desire to make things go bang. The explosives were ugly, honest combinations of Catharin mineral detonators and human thermite. Chen's fingers trembled as he placed the last one. Got it, he breathed. 3-minute arm delay. Morrison checked his watch. 3 minutes. Time stretched long and brittle. He felt the weight of the whole mission settle on his shoulders. He told his team this was possible. He told them they could stop the jump. He had to hold that promise. They backed away from the core chamber, wires trailing like broken threads. Morrison's mic screamed with static as he tried to reach Brooks. Brooks, status. Static, then a voice strained with effort. We're set. Secondary feeds armed. Martinez hit something I didn't want him to hit. We're cut off. Get to the evac route, Captain. Morrison cursed softly. Hold on, we're on our way. Outside in maintenance tunnels, the sounds of battle thickened. Drones converged with terrible speed now, their logic upgraded with every second. The factory ship was not only reacting, it was learning. The humans had forced it to improvise, and it was beginning to improvise back. They moved faster. Chen's boots slipped on metal. Morrison's heart thudded like a fist in his chest. The alarms counted down in his head, a rhythm he tried to ignore. They reached a ladder leading to a service shaft. Up, Morrison ordered. We take the access route up to the hull. Tony can pull us out from there. They climbed, muscles burning. Distantly they heard the deep, grinding roar of heavy defenses coming online, the factory ship forming hunting formations inside its belly. The sound made Morrison's teeth ache. At the top of the shaft, a maintenance hatch opened into a long shaftlet with warning strips. Chen pushed it, and they crawled into narrow space. A moment later, a wall of light flooded the corridor as a cluster of security drones found them. Their indicators were honeycomb red, and metallic mouths opened like the throats of beasts. Morrison's hand hovered over his detonator. He had a choice: try to run and risk being trapped, or stop and fight in a place where escape might be impossible. He glanced at Chen, saw the same determination mirrored there. Morrison thought of his crew, of the Catharins in the tunnels, of Lisa's calm eyes, of Rodriguez's grin. He thought of all the worlds that might burn if the factory ship escaped. He pressed the detonator, not to blow the core yet that had 3 minutes left, but a small pulse to collapse the access corridor behind them. The metal groaned and buckled. Dust fell like rain. The drones flung themselves forward, smashing into the collapsed hull like moths into a candle. They were not safe, not by a long shot. The Corps was armed. The factory ship had woken fully. Every hunting subroutine of its mind pointed at the humans now. Morrison's throat tightened. Over the comms, Tony's voice was thin. "Captain, massive energy fluctuation. You need to get out, now." Morrison's hand shook, and for the first time in the mission, he let himself wonder if madness was the same thing as courage. The question had no answer. Chen's voice cut in, breathless. "Captain, 3 minutes." He tasted dust and copper and fear. Then he heard the soft, steady click of boots above them. Not human. Heavy, echoing, regimented. Security units were converging on their compartment. The factory ship had sent its own elite guards. Morrison swallowed. "Run," he said, then a quieter thing. "If we don't make it, tell them we tried." The shadow at the shaft's mouth deepened. Mechanical eyes glowed. The corridor filled with the sound of metal stepping. And in the heart of the factory ship, the core's glow deepened, ticking down with patient inevitability. The shaft shook as the devourer guards advanced. Their footsteps were like thunder, metal echoing on metal, each step the sound of inevitability. Morrison gritted his teeth and dragged Chen forward. Behind them, the collapsed bulkhead groaned under the pressure of drones clawing at the wreckage. They were boxed in. "Captain," Amy's voice snapped over the comms, harsh and ragged under weapons fire. "We're pinned on the surface. Half the squad's wounded. We can't hold them off much longer." Morrison pressed his hand against the shaft wall, steadying himself. His lungs burned. His head spun with decisions, each one deadly. He keyed his mic. "Hold, Carter, buy me 5 minutes." 5 minutes, she shot back, her voice laced with disbelief. "Sir, we don't have 5 seconds." "Then steal them," Morrison said quietly. "Steal me time." The first of the Devourer guards appeared at the far end of the shaft. They were bigger than drones, full combat frames, plated in black metal, arms ending in weapons that hummed with restrained energy. Their movements were synchronized, every step perfect. "Captain," Chen whispered, pale, "we can't fight these things, not head-on." Morrison's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't fight head-on." He grabbed a charge from Chen's satchel and slapped it against the wall. Sparks spat as it armed. "Back!" he barked. The explosion tore a ragged hole in the shaft, venting dust and shrapnel into the guards. The blast staggered them only for a second, but a second was enough. Morrison shoved Chen through the breach, into a secondary conduit that curved upward toward the Corps' auxiliary vents. The guards recalibrated instantly, their formation tightening. Morrison could hear their processors whirring. No hesitation this time. They were adapting. The conduit was narrow, forcing Morrison and Chen to crawl. Sparks rained from damaged circuits overhead. The air was hot, heavy with static. Behind them, the guards followed, not rushing but advancing with measured certainty. "Captain," Tony's voice crackled through the comm, full of panic. "Energy readings spiking. The core's destabilizing faster than expected. You've got less than 2 minutes before the whole thing blows." Morrison's heart slammed against his ribs. Less than 2 minutes. That wasn't time to fight. That wasn't time to save anyone. "Unless—" "Tony," he said, "prep the Defiance for a hard pull. When I give the signal, you're going to rip us out of this ship, even if it tears the hull apart." "Jake," Lisa's voice broke through, urgent and pained. "You won't survive if you're still inside when it goes critical." "Somebody has to be here to make sure it does go critical," Morrison replied. Chen froze, twisting around in the conduit. "No, don't you dare. We came here together. We finished this together." Morrison almost smiled. Chen was bleeding from a cut on his temple, sweat streaking through dust. A young man still clinging to the stubborn hope that the galaxy could be fair. "We're not here to live forever, Chen," Morrison said softly. "We're here to make sure someone else gets the chance to." The conduit opened into a cavernous chamber, a secondary energy nexus feeding the main core. Machinery stretched like skeletal ribs, glowing with unstable light. The air shook with power. Morrison shoved Chen forward. "Get to the exit vent. Tony can pull you from there." "What about you?" "I've got one more thing to do." Chen hesitated. His eyes darted between Morrison and the advancing shadows behind them. "Captain." "That's an order," Morrison snapped, harsher than he meant. Chen's jaw tightened. He saluted once sharply, then crawled toward the vent. Morrison turned back to face the guards. The Devourers filled the conduit mouth, their forms outlined in red light. They were silent, efficient, unyielding. Morrison pulled the manual detonator from his vest. The charges were synced to the core, ready to cascade, ready to end it all. But he had to hold the guards here, had to keep them from reaching Chen, had to make sure the plan worked. "Come on, you bastards," he growled. "Let's see how perfect you really are." He fired. His rifle barked flame, rounds sparking against black armor. The guards advanced unflinching. Morrison threw his last charge, blasting another section of wall into shards. The chamber roared with noise, smoke, fire. For a heartbeat, Morrison felt alive in a way only death could grant. He was chaos. He was defiance. He was human. On the surface, Carter's squad fought like wolves in the ruins. Explosions shook the ground as mining constructs collapsed. Refugees streamed through tunnels, Lisa guiding them with calm urgency. Rodriguez's jury-rigged systems howled, tearing the planet itself into unpredictable tremors that shattered devourer formations. And in orbit, the Defiance hung in position, engines screaming as Tony fought to keep the ship steady against the gravitational chaos. "Captain," Tony's voice cracked. "Signal the pull, we're out of time." Static filled the channel. Then Morrison's voice came through, steady, grim. "Package delivered." The comm went dead. The core chamber lit with searing white light. The containment rings cracked, power surging like a star tearing itself apart. Chen scrambled through the vent, clawing his way toward the extraction beacon. The walls behind him glowed red, melting. He felt the blast wave chasing him, felt heat singe his back. The Defiance's grapples fired, slamming into the vent shaft. Metal screamed as the ship tore its way backward, engines burning blue. Chen was yanked out, tumbling into the airlock as the ship ripped free. And behind them, the factory ship convulsed. Energy surged through its veins, overload ripping across conduits. Drones froze mid-flight. Harvesters faltered, collapsing where they stood. The core went critical. From orbit, the explosion was a sunrise. The factory ship tore apart in a chain reaction, its pieces shattering into a storm of molten fragments. Two neighboring devourer vessels were caught in the blast, ripped open like fragile shells. The shockwave rolled across space, scattering the fleet. For the first time since awakening, the devourers faltered. On the ground, Carter's Marines paused mid-fight, watching the sky ignite. Lisa's refugees fell silent, their melodic voices lifting in cries of awe. Elder Solani wept openly, her 3 hands clasped in prayer. Rodriguez looked up, eyes wide, whispering, "He did it. The crazy bastard actually did it." But on the Defiance's bridge, the crew stared at the tactical display. 3 enemy ships destroyed, dozens crippled. But hundreds more remained. And there was no sign of Captain Jake Morrison. The Defiance limped above Catha Prime, engines groaning from the shockwave. Smoke curled through the bridge vents, the smell of burnt wiring sharp in the air. The crew was silent. On the main display, wreckage from the factory ship burned in orbit, a storm of molten fragments scattering across the stars. 2 devourer vessels spun apart, broken shells. For a moment it looked like victory. But then the sensors refreshed. Hundreds of devourer ships remained. They were regrouping, moving with the same mechanical certainty, their formations closing like iron jaws around the crippled human craft and the wounded planet below. Carter's voice cracked through the comm. "Command, this is Lieutenant Carter. Captain Morrison is gone. Repeat, Captain Morrison is gone. But the fleet is still coming." Her words felt like a weight pressed against every heart aboard the Defiance. Lisa pressed a hand against the comm panel, her voice trembling. He stayed behind so we could make it out. He bought us time. He gave us a chance." Rodriguez slammed his fist against the console, eyes burning. "Then we don't waste it. We don't waste him." Elder Solani's voice filled the channel, raw with sorrow but edged with something else, resolve. "Deathworlders, your captain has given us hope, but hope is not enough. If we fall now, his sacrifice means nothing." Her words carried through the comms, translated into every tongue of the refugees huddled below. For the first time, the devourers hesitate. They bleed. If we strike now together, we may yet live. Carter lifted her head. "She's right. We can't win in a straight fight, but Morrison showed us the truth. Chaos breaks them. They can't adapt fast enough if we throw everything at them at once." The plan came together in a breath. Rodriguez worked furiously, tying Catherine geothermal systems into the Defiance's power relays. We can overload their formations with seismic bursts, make the ground itself unpredictable beneath their ships. Carter rallied what was left of her Marines, their armor scorched, weapons low. We'll lead the refugees into the tunnels, hit and run, again and again. Every explosion, every charge keeps the machines off balance. Lisa organized the wounded and the children, turning them into messengers, runners, carriers of supplies. Everyone fights in their own way. Everyone resists. And above it all, Tony opened every channel, broadcasting live to the galaxy. You turned your backs before, he said, voice hard, raw. But hear this, the humans are still here. Morrison is gone, but we are not finished. You want to see what Deathworlders do when the odds are impossible? Watch. The battle for Catha Prime became madness. The ground quaked as Rodriguez triggered wave after wave of artificial earthquakes, swallowing harvesters whole. Carter's Marines struck from shadows, vanishing before drones could pin them down. Refugees sabotaged machinery with mining charges, singing war songs that rose above the roar of combat. The Defiance dove and weaved through the skis, her hull battered but unbroken, Tony flying her like a madman. Every shot they fired, every maneuver was reckless, chaotic, defiant. The Devourers tried to adapt. They shifted patterns, recalibrated formations. But every time they thought they understood, the humans broke the rhythm. They fought dirty. They fought illogically. They fought like Deathworlders. And slowly, impossibly, the tide turned. On the bridge, Rodriguez stared at the tactical display. It's working. Their formations are unraveling. They can't maintain cohesion under this much chaos. Lisa leaned forward, clutching the back of his chair. But there are still too many. Even broken, there are too many. Tony's hands flew over the controls, sweat dripping from his brow. Then we give them one last surprise. He pulled up the power routing schematic Morrison had left open, the final contingency. A suicide maneuver. The Defiance's core, linked with the Catharan geothermal grid, could unleash a blast strong enough to cripple the fleet. But it would burn the ship out with it. Carter's voice broke through. Command, are you seeing this? That's a one-way ticket. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. We can't, Jake, already. Rodriguez cut her off, fierce. Jake showed us the way. He didn't die so we could hide. He died so we could finish the fight. The ship trembled as the Devourers closed in, the surviving fleet tightening their noose. Energy beams scorched the sky. Tony locked the course. All hands brace, we're about to make history. Carter's Marines huddled in the tunnels with the refugees, whispering prayers. Rodriguez slammed the final connection into place, sparks flying. Lisa gripped her console, whispering Morrison's name. And Elder Selani raised her voice, singing a song of mourning, a song of defiance, her people joining in until the tunnels shook with harmony. The Defiance charged. Her engines blazed brighter than stars, tearing through the Devourer formation. Drones swarmed, beams slashed, but the little ship didn't falter. She dove straight into the heart of the swarm. Tony's voice rang out over every channel. For Jake, for humanity, for Catha. Rodriguez slammed the final switch. The Defiance's core linked with the planet's heart. Energy surged, impossible and wild, chaos given form. And then the world erupted. From orbit, it looked like a second sun. The explosion tore across space, ripping through Devourer formations, scattering ships like leaves in a storm. The swarm broke. Their perfect order shattered. Those that survived turned and fled into the void, their hunger finally checked. On the ground, the Catharans watched as the sky burned. Their mournful song turned to a cry of victory, echoing through the tunnels, carrying across the ruined world. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy listened. Days later, the survivors gathered in the shattered capital. Carter stood at the front, armor dented, eyes hollow but unyielding. Rodriguez's hands were wrapped, burned from the overload. Lisa leaned on a crutch, leg broken but still tending the wounded. Tony's voice was gone, throat raw from screaming orders and defiance alike. Elder Selani stood before them, her voice carrying. Your captain gave us hope. Your crew gave us victory. The galaxy will remember this day, not because of numbers, not because of strength, but because of humanity. She looked out at the refugees, at the battered soldiers, at the scarred survivors. The Devourers believed themselves perfect, but perfection broke before chaos, and chaos was your gift, humanity's gift. Carter lifted her rifle, raising it high. "We are Deathworlders, and we are not finished." The crowd roared. Far away, in distant systems, alien eyes watched the broadcast. Civilizations that had turned away from Katha Prime now saw what a single human crew had done against the impossible. And for the first time, they wondered if perhaps the galaxy's weakest, strangest newcomers might be its last answer after all. Above the ruins, the wreckage of the Defiance glimmered in orbit, broken but unforgotten. And though Captain Jake Morrison was gone, his words lived on in every survivor, in every song, in every whisper of defiance. When has impossible ever stopped a human before?